There are a lot of ways to customize bar charts within Tableau. One way to enhance the design is to change the end shape of the bars. I have another video on how to create a rounded bar chart and another on how to create a 3-color gradients, but this one's going to be on adding these end shapes. In this example, I used a triangle, but you can get creative since any image or Tableau shape will work as an end shape. One option, which is the easier option but it's not as dynamic, is to type the sum of sales plus a constant into the columns. So I'm going to try out 4,000 and see what that gives me. Then I'll right-click on one of our columns and make it a dual axis. Then right-click on one of the axes and synchronize them. And the measure names are not necessary for this mark, so I'm going to remove them. Then I'll change this from a line to a shape. And under shapes, I'm going to choose a triangle that points to the right. But you can do this with any other shape, even a shape you loaded, to get a cool effect for the end of the bars. And these triangles are looking a bit big, so I'm going to go to the size slider in the marks to decrease the size of the triangles. And under color, I'm going to choose a color that matches the end of our bars. And under the first mark, I'm going to make the size of the bars themselves a little bit bigger. This first option works great if your data is static and it doesn't change much over time. Because the problem with this is that when I pull in a filter like segment and I look at just one segment, you can see that the lines are really far from the shapes. And while the distance between the line and the shape is equal distant for each subcategory, because we're using a constant, the magnitude of the values will determine the distance between the bars and the end shapes. So if you want to create a dynamic view where no matter what the values are or what's being filtered, the bars will have the same distance to the shape, we'll need to use our magnitude of the values in the adjustment. That way it's taken into account and won't affect the distance. To do this, I'll create a calculated field since it's going to be a little bit longer, so I don't want to type it directly into the pill. I'll call this the sales adjustment for the end shape. And in here I'll do an LOD function. So I'll type holding fixed the table name, comma the segment, comma the subcategory, take the sum of sales. This is essentially identifying the sum of the sales for each subcategory, and it allows us to filter by the two fields that we put at the beginning, table name and segment. Then I'll add holding fixed the table name, the segment, the sum of sales, divided by 400. This gives us an adjuster field that takes into account the total sales holding fixed our filters, which are table name and segment. So anything I'd want to be able to filter by, I would add to these LOD formulas for our adjuster field. Then I'll drag this field in to replace our existing adjuster field. And now you can see when I filter for a specific segment, the values in the chart change, but for each subcategory, there's equal distance between the bars and the shapes, even when I remove the segment filter. For formatting, I'm going to go ahead and remove the headers. Then I'll format the worksheet and change the font to be white, make it a bit larger, and have it be Tableau bold so it sticks out. For shading, I'm going to remove the shading for the worksheet. And I'll remove the row divider and the column divider for the borders. For the lines, I'll get rid of the 0 lines for the sheet and the grid lines for the columns. And you can see on here there's a little bit of space between the bar and the arrow, but because the actual box I'm going to put this in is going to be less wide, there should be less space. I'll remove the legend and hide the title. Then I'll set it to fill the entire view and resize it so it fits in our box. I'm also going to hide the field label since I already have subcategory as a title for this box. And you can see that the shapes did adjust, so we get this interesting tipped effect to the bars.